right, item number 5, the consent agenda. Are there any items that members wish to have set aside of the agenda? Mr. Potvin?
I would like to remove the field trip to Fenway Park and talk about that.
Okay.
Can you address it?
So you can remove it and talk about it. You'll vote on it. We'll vote on it like a regular agenda item. Yep. So it's usually helpful in these cases when there is a question about a field trip to let the administrators know, so that if a teacher could be here, it would be most helpful. But it might be
How
a more.
about the one that authorized it?
Yep.
We talked with her.
We do have to deal with the consent agenda first before that discussion happens, though.
Having that item removed, any other items that need to be removed? Push a button. Thank you. Okay. There's the words. Thank you. Okay. Hearing no objection, the consent agenda is adopted. Those were the words I was looking for. Okay, thank you. Okay. Agenda item number 6.
We don't go into that one.
No, do we talk about it now? The field trip? Okay.
You may just open the floor to committee member Potvin to figure out why we're discussing. Clarification.
Okay, the reason I wanted to talk about it is I wanted to clarify what goes into these particular field trips. When I'm reading about them, I'm not getting a full gist of what it is exactly they're doing, and this applies to all of the field trips. And there are some that I think members have expressed concern in the past that have a tremendous educational impact, and then there are some that are a little bit more peripheral. And I'm trying to, having been a season ticket member of the Red Sox, I'm trying to remember when we used to have STEM days and what is that and what does that entail. And so I think the point I'm trying to get to is I like to know that there is a significant educational piece to this and not just a Red Sox game. So I'm wondering on your part, or Karen, your part, when you're reviewing these, how much detail are you getting, and can you expand on any of that?
Sure. So the process for field trips is actually starts at the school level. The teacher will fill out the forms that you see, goes to the principal. The principal then has that conversation with the staff if there's a question about the relevance and the connection to courses and standards and all of that. Then it's sent to me to review, and when I review the field trips, I'll be honest, I'm really looking for to make sure the safety stuff is covered, to make sure that we have enough, the staff to student ratio is there. And then if there's any questions in regards to any of that, I contact my administrative assistant contacts the school, whether that be the teacher or the principal to determine that. So we don't have a protocol in terms of listing, other than what you see here on the possible activities and the information that we ask folks to provide for us in terms of connection to curriculum or things like that from the district level. Those conversations should be happening at the building level. Other than what's listed here, no.
It might be helpful to have a little bit of historical background. For a period of time, we were approving all field trips individually, and so the person who was chaperoning the field trip or hosting the field trip had to come in and give us a presentation. That proved to be very time-consuming, and 2 years ago or 3 years ago, we voted if it was one of the recurring field trips that we had already evaluated over the years several times, that they would just go into the consent agenda and we would approve them as a whole. Anything that was new or questionable would come through as a full presentation. So this is something that's been vetted year after year. And if you go to the Boston Central website, it explains the full details of what they do on STEM Education Day. It exposes students to different STEM concepts, technology. There's a whole series, an agenda of activities, a STEM fair to promote the endless possibilities in the STEM field, and then after all of that, they get to watch the Red Sox game. So it's an extended day of learning before they get to go and watch the game.
So I might add to Mr. Poppins' point that we include that information on what you see, linking it just back to standards and just giving an overview of what that might look like. That would be very, very fair, I think, to ask. And that way, when you're looking at your packet, you'd see that as well. So perhaps we could make an effort to just add that to our current form.
Okay. Any other discussion? Okay. Oh, actually, all those in favor of the Red Sox trip? I think that's unanimous. Okay. Thank you. Okay. Agenda item number 6, public input. So here's the note. Members of the public may address the school committee for up to 3 minutes on non-agenda items now and on agenda items later. Comments that pertain to staff, personal matters, or a student issue should be directed to the superintendent or the appropriate staff member at Lewiston Public Schools. Public comment shall be directed to the school committee and be brief, not repetitive, and related to the matter at hand. So, any public comment? Go to the podium and you need to state your name and where you live.
My name is Anna Siegel, and I live in Yarmouth, Maine. You might have seen my letter in the Lewiston Sun Journal a little while ago, and I'm going to be reading that letter as I believe that it is still relevant and edited for clarity, because I wrote a letter about how Portland and South Portland and other towns in southern and western Maine have declared a climate emergency, and how a similar proposal has been given to the Lewiston School Committee and should be considered, because in October and November of 2019, Maine's first and fourth largest cities made history. Portland and South Portland became the first places in Maine to declare a climate emergency. It wasn't at the drop of a hat, however. Youth and adult allies of southern Maine presented and worked towards the resolution being passed. Young activists inside Maine Youth for Climate Justice and Maine Strikes were excited at the victory, but we weren't done yet. Portland and South Portland weren't alone for long. Brunswick and Bar Harbor declared an emergency, with more on the way or in the process. A similar resolution has now been presented to the Lewiston Public School District. It is only fitting that a school, a place where children learn about the world, listen to the youth activists. However, whether you are a child, student, parent, or adult, we all live on this planet. That means that no matter who someone is, drawing down carbon emissions through climate emergency declarations benefits us all. So that is why I'm testifying to you now. Climate change is often seen as a scary and abstract concept. And how would understanding around the crisis change if student schools recognized it for the emergency it is? How many more environmental leaders would we have growing up today? I ask you these questions now and urge you to join the climate emergency movement by passing a climate emergency resolution. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment that is not repetitive in nature?
Nathan, where from, correct? Hello. My name is Michael McCormick. I'm from Lewiston, Maine. I have 2 young children who go to school in this town. And when I'm receiving reports of education, which I thank Mr. Potvin for bringing that up, because I think everything Ms. Parks said maybe should be presented when we say, hey, these are going to be the field trips that are going, and this is how it's beneficial. So even if we have to copyright or whatnot to get that information to the parents in our community. Second and foremost, the reason I came in is because I saw my son's state assessment. It's the first one he's received. He's in the 3rd grade. He didn't pass, which is okay. There's room for growth. But the most important thing is I noticed that the school, the district, and the state also did not pass by a long shot. They did not meet state requirements, and they were under in some of the state requirements. My son's progress report did not have any notations from his teacher whatsoever through the entire progress report. That was a bit frustrating. So my question is, where are we going with the education for these children? What are the state requirements, and how can we fulfill these state requirements? What changes can be made or could be made to benefit these children? This is the biggest asset in our community, is children. Any teacher that I deal with, I always thank them for investing in our biggest asset in the community. So we really need to get a handle on it, because life is good in Maine. It's the way life should be, but we can't just talk about it. We need to be about it. Wow, that was really tough to follow up. I'm proud of you for the work you're doing. You're young. I'm 34, and it's really hard to be up here, but this is very serious, and I haven't invested any of my time, so I have to be part of it, and unless I'm part of it, I cannot complain about the outcome. So I really want to get involved, so anything that can benefit me will benefit me. 2 minutes left, so I want to give it to someone else.
So I think as far as parent involvement, Mr. Finn, did you want to talk a little bit about Lewiston Listens, and that way share some ways that parents can be involved and get some questions answered in a more one-to-one setting, kind of?
Absolutely. Thank you, Ms. Roy. Ms. McCormick, I want to actually thank you for bringing this to light. We know that the most recent report that was furnished by the state regarding our MEA actually is akin to stepping on a scale this year and finding out how much we weighed last year. Although there's still something to the 2018-19 data. That took place, those tests took place a year ago, and those tests were based on a curriculum, a budget, structures, standards, and procedures from a long time back. I would even say to you that a year from now, when a report comes out, it will just be a snapshot of how our students were doing with those particular skills at that particular time. Now, on the flip side of that, I'm a data guy, and that data does tell me a story. It tells me about attendance. It tells me about graduation rate. It tells me about what percentage of our students are actually, quote unquote, getting it. And it begs me to ask the question, why aren't 80% of our students getting it? Because our students are brilliant. A lot of our students speak 2-3 languages. Yeah. We've got to take a closer look, and we have taken a closer look at where it is that we're falling short. So as a new superintendent, we began a series called Lewiston Listens, and I would invite you to check out our website to attend Lewiston Listens series, where we literally go out to our school communities, and we have Montello coming up next. And you don't have to be part of that school community. You can come to any one that you'd like to. And we certainly ask questions about, well, first of all, what are we doing well? Because we want to keep doing those things. And all is not lost in Lewiston. But also, what should we stop doing? What are we not doing very well? And we go into deep discussions through gallery walks, through small groups, and then we share out. And a lot of good has come out of that. On top of that, we feed people, and that's kind of a neat thing too. There's usually pizza or something from Sam's, which folks do tend to like. But that's given us a lot of data in terms of more than just performance data, which again comes a year too late. It gives us process and procedure and even demographic data as well. Who are we? How do we do business? And what are folks' perceptions of how we're doing business? That's very, very important. All that comes together to create what we call a continuous school improvement plan. And that's just not a plan to have a plan on paper. That's actually a course of action that we need to take moving forward. So, Ms. McCormick, I'll share with you and everyone else too that I wasn't surprised when I saw those scores come out. In fact, I was waiting for them because we can link that data to our strategic plan that we have moving forward to address the very things that you were just talking about. Our students deserve better. Our teachers deserve better. And at this point in time, now that we are deeply in the development of a strategic plan that will begin on July 1st of this year, I do believe that that data can be very useful. The data you can provide as well in terms of your experiences and your child's experiences, and your children's experience, I should say, will also be very useful moving forward. We can get better. We understand that those test scores belong to us, but that's not our future. Those are our scores, but that's not our future. And that's what we're going to hang our hat on. One step at a time, over the course of the next 3 years, I expect to see significant gains when it comes to that snapshot. That, again, just tells one story, but it's still a story. So hopefully that helps, and hopefully you'll come out to Lewiston and listens.
I'm taking it from you now. No, we can't have a back and forth, but I just wanted to put it out there for parents in general, for the community to know that these things are happening. I know you could talk about this for all day, so I had to take that away from you now. Any other public comment? Yes.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Samantha. I am from Lewiston, and I'm just here to represent Anna, who spoke so beautifully about supporting a climate resolution, having renewable clean energy by 2030. As a social worker, I work with children in Lewiston, and I directly work with the impact climate change has had on them. So we talk about test scores. Well, we can't underestimate the significant effect that climate has on our children. Drinking water, lead paint, clean food that they do not have access to. So we're not just talking about renewable energy, we're talking about the smallest things. We're talking about educating them whole body. So I just want to give a shout out to that proposal, and I support it 100%. Thank you.
Any further public comment? All right. So we don't have any student representatives here tonight. Are they busy doing student stuff? Did you hear anything? Yeah?
So our state championship girls hockey team has a banquet tonight. So they're out doing their thing. And we'll hear from them next Monday.
Okay. Thank you. That takes care of agenda item number 7. Agenda item number 8, to receive an update regarding 21st century after school / summer programming. Jen Carter will present.
No dimmer anymore.
If it says airplay off and that, oh, how do I click in? Okay.
Can you see the screen, Monique? So shut it off.
All right. So thank you very much for having me tonight. I presented in the fall, but I know that many of you weren't at that presentation. So there are some details that I'll review, and then other details will be new. My name is Jen Carter. I'm the director of the 21st Century Program. We are the after-school and summer program serving Connors, Geiger, McMahon, the middle school, and the high school. So the only 2 schools in Lewiston that don't have 21st Century are Farwell and Montello. Our current funding comes from the federal 21st century grants. The federal grants are given to the state of Maine, and then we apply to the Maine DOE for that funding. Lewiston currently has 3 21st century grants. One grant funds the middle and high school, one grant funds Geiger and McMahon, sorry, I'm nervous, and the third grant funds Connors. And this slide shows you when each of those grants ends. So specifically tonight, I'm going to focus mostly on the middle and high school program because that grant ends in June of this year. We do have the opportunity to apply again for a continuation grant, which when I was hired, we were in the original 5-year grant. I was hired in year 4. This will be the 3rd time that I've applied for the continuation funding for the district. And that funding is available to us to reapply as many times as we want. The tricky part is that it's not guaranteed, and we find out about the grant after the local budget process has happened. So if we don't put the money for the middle and high school program into the local budget and we don't get the grant, and I'm not saying that we're not good grant writers because we are, but you never know, then we will not have a program at the middle and high school next year. This is the 12th year that we've had 21st century at Lewiston Middle School and Lewiston High School, and our kids depend on the program. So what I'm going to try to convince you of tonight is that these funds, the way that the Maine Department of Education states when we apply for the grant, are to supplement, not to supplant, the programming that students need. So right now we're running our 21st century programs, all of them, but especially at the middle and high school, on the smallest budget that we possibly can. If you were to write into the local budget the $129,135.86 that it takes to sustain the basic needs, the bare building blocks of that program, and then we get the grant, we can do even more with kids. I can come back next year and I can like wow you. Like we can have so many amazing things to talk about. But that's just kind of the structure of how the grants work and how many we have. Our programs, and this will be familiar to some of you, include a lot of pieces. The foundation of everything that we do is social-emotional learning. Every single day we use circle practice to help kids build relationships with each other, learn habits of work skills, learn social-emotional skills. I'm talking about things like how to listen when somebody's talking, how to persevere through a difficult problem, how to make friends, how to be kind. One big one is like, when do you keep the thoughts in your head and when do you let them come out of your mouth? When is it kind to say something hard to somebody? Is there a way to say that? Like we work a lot on those types of things and we all need that. We do academic enrichment and that focuses mostly on literacy and STEM. Leadership development, we have visual and performing arts. We provide help with homework at the middle and high school, not at the elementary schools. We have healthy snack every day and cooking programs for students and then daily physical activity. And all of these pieces are required by our grant. They're required by our grant because they're things that our students need. This is one of my favorite pictures from the middle school. This is social-emotional learning in action. They're playing a circle game. They went outside that day because it's a nice day, and it's just happy. This is Dina on the left. She's our site coordinator over at the middle school. She is awesome. And Jamie Wardwell, they've both been working for the program since I started. So for 8 years, they've been our staff at the middle school. That staff has not changed. And so we start program with an activity every day that helps the kids to bond, and then we reflect on what skills did we learn. Our results, we served over 400 students last year. Our goal was 450. We did not reach it. And a big reason for that is we have a lot more funding for our summer programs than we do for after school. We didn't have capacity to serve more students. We felt like we were really stretching our capacity, but we're still hoping to meet that 450 goal for this year. When kids attend 21st Century, we can show that they have significant academic gains, social gains, and then they also have an increased positive relationship with school. A big piece of research around after-school programming is not to do drill and skill, but to really help kids to re-engage with the relationship with the idea of school in general. We have students that will tell you that they come to school because they're excited about 21st Century. Or I have students that get upset if we have a snow day on a specific day of the week because that means that they miss karate or African drumming or whatever activity that they were excited about that afternoon. These are some more results around specific percentages. We had 55% of our elementary students who regularly attended our summer programs maintained or increased their reading level from spring to fall. 58% of students who attended after-school programs increased their reading level from fall to spring. 45% of students who regularly attended the after-school programs increased their math scores from fall to spring. And then we also looked at behavior and homework completion, and those were on our staff surveys. So teachers were telling us this many kids moved up. And we saw a significant increase in both behavior in the classroom for students who were regularly attending our program, as well as their ability to complete homework. These photos show just one example of an expeditionary learning project, which is something that we try to extend in our middle school program. So the students are doing expeditions as part of their regular curriculum, but they're also doing expeditions with us. And another big piece of research around after-school programming is that many of our students just need more time. They need more time to engage with the curriculum. They need more time to talk about what they're learning. They need more time to use their reading and math skills in a real-world context. So this is an expedition that we did last year around aquaculture. We used a 4-H curriculum, and the kids did simulations around different aquaculture themes. My very, very smart staff member, Allison Brooks, over at the middle school led this for us. She's a science teacher. In the top photo, they're working on keystone species. So they had to fish in the bowl for the different colors of beads, and then they find out what happens if you fish all the dark blue beads that represent this one fish and that population goes away. How does that affect the entire ecosystem? They learned about DNA. I still have my blue crab DNA necklace hanging on the mirror in my car. And then after we did these lessons for 8 weeks, we got a small grant. We took the students to Hurricane Island, where they saw aquaculture in the field. Hurricane Island does scallop farming. So we learned all about scallop farming. We learned why scallop farming is important in Maine as the climate changes. There are a lot of species that, like the fish, I'm not going to say this right, but the fish populations are going down, and so they're trying to find alternate ways to grow the seafood economy in Maine, and scallops are one of them because they can survive in warmer water. And so they grow them in these cages. It was really cool. The kids got to see them, and they thought it was great when they held the scallop and then spit at them. We spent a day out there. We got to go on the boat. It was really, really awesome. So during this, we're building relationships with kids. We're in smaller groups. We're using the same teachers and staff members that they see during the day. One of my staff at the middle school, I think that she says this perfectly. She doesn't take her school day hat off at 21st Century. She tips it to the side. She's an amazing teacher. And the relationships that she builds with our 21st century kids are so strong that she said that even if those students aren't in her homeroom, they'll come to her to talk to her about problems that they're having during the school day because of the trust that they've built with her during the after-school program. So having that extra time and extra connection is about social-emotional learning. It's also about their academic experience. We have kids that can talk to you about the science of aquaculture in this really smart way, using content vocabulary. They're writing, they're doing math, they're doing extra, right? on top of the school day. And that's helping them to catch up and close the opportunity and achievement gap that they may have with their peers for whatever reason. There's another Hurricane Island picture. We went tide pooling. So why are after school and summer programs vital for our students? I really want to challenge you. I think sometimes after school gets kind of thought of as an extra thing, and I know that I just said the word extra. I'm going to correct myself. It really is a vital program for our students. It's an essential service that we offer in our district. 2/3 of the academic achievement gap between affluent and low-income students can be attributed to unequal access to high-quality after-school and summer learning opportunities. I'm thinking about my own daughter, who is a 6th grader. She learns a lot in school. She's a kid that loves school, but if I could pick one activity that she gets the most out of, it would be dance. And she dances 2 nights a week and on Saturday, and that's because I can pay for those classes. So we make sure that all of our students have access to those types of enrichment opportunities. In terms of the second 2 bullet points, our scores from last year actually surpassed the national averages in terms of improvement in grades and test scores. So to me, that shows that Lewiston is doing a really good job in the programming that we offer. Here's another picture from the middle school. That's that awesome teacher that I was telling you about. Her name is Jamie, helping to teach a karate class. And then this is our funding breakdown, and I can pass this around because I think it's the most important slide for you to have. But in this column is what we have currently for 21st Century Grant funding this year. This is what we can anticipate having next year. Now my hope is that those 2 zeros at the top turn into these numbers because we get that grant. But if we don't get it, we're not going to find out until the school budget process has already happened. So my ask for you tonight is to adopt that money, or to consider, as you're going through the budget process, to consider putting that money into the local budget. And then if we get the grant, we have more money for after school and summer programming, which would be awesome. But the alternative to not putting it into the local budget is that we don't get the grant and we just don't have a program for these kids next year. And I don't want that to happen. And I will tell you that there are exemplary programs. I think that Lewiston has an exemplary 21st century program. And I think that my consultant at the state would tell you the same thing. But there are other exemplary programs that directors that I've seen present over and over and over again at our directors trainings who have reapplied for grants and not been funded. And their programs have just gone away. And to have had 21st Century in Lewiston for 12 years and then not have it next year because we didn't get the grant, that would be really sad. Also, if we put it in the local budget, we can keep applying for the grant. So if we don't get the grant this year, we can reapply next year. We can reapply next year, the year after that. So I think in terms of the return on investment that you would have for putting it into the local budget, that there's a really strong argument to just make sure that this is sustainable, what we need to keep the program going. And then the last thing I want to say about this slide is the column on the far right, the local budget request. That's the increase from last year. I've heard that said as the flat budget, which I've interpreted to mean like last year's budget. So those numbers would be in addition to what was in the building request for after school and summer ESY programming for last year. So what happens without local funding to sustain Lewiston 21st Century? We would not have a program for the middle and high school next year. 160 students in grades 7 through 12 would not have after school and summer opportunities. And I want to say that our program is different than standards recovery. There are many students that go to summer school to recover standards in the summer. Our program is an enrichment program, so it's for students who may not have failed a class, but they really want and need something to do, and they and their families want that something to be academically focused, because even though they may not have failed a class, they may have passed their standards, their skills are still low, and they know that they need that extra time in the summer to catch up. And then finally, the $86,000, that's the deficit at Connors, Geiger, and McMahon for next year. And that's because the grants for Connors, Geiger, and McMahon are 5-year grants. We get the same amount of money for the first 3 years. In year 4, it gets cut to 75%, and then in year 5, it gets cut to 65%. So if we don't make up that deficit for Geiger and McMahon, and so we're going to have a smaller grant at those 3 schools next year, we can do that. Like, we can run a smaller program, but then if we want to go back and apply for continuation funding for those schools, it's not going to look really good that we didn't find the money to fill in that extra gap. We just want the state to keep giving us money. They're going to look at that as, well, maybe Lewiston really isn't committed to that sustainability. But if we can find a way to make up that extra funding, that makes our application look more attractive when we try to apply for that continuation money. Why is our program so important? After school and summer programs, again, they're essential to closing the achievement and opportunity gaps for many of our students. These programs, 2 points, are the only interventions, because there's a lot of interventions that we do during the school day. These are the only interventions that provide students with more learning time. And I think that that is a huge factor. We're also offering programming in the summer and between the hours of 3 and 6 o'clock, where if kids aren't in our programs or another after-school program in the community, their parents are working, they're just kind of by themselves, unsupervised. I have a lot of families that say middle and high school, it's actually more important for their kids to have that supervised activity because, and I know with my own daughter, like, she wants more independence. She's going to be a 7th grader. But I'm like, I don't know if I want you to have that much independence, because she has more power, right, to make bad choices. So having a safe place for kids to be is a really, really, really important piece of this, because if they're not with us doing the enriching activities, what are the alternative places for them to go? And I know that we have a lot of other wonderful programs in our community, but I don't think any of those programs are ready to take on 160 extra students. It's good that we have a lot of programs because we have a lot of students who need to be in programs. This graphic here was shared with me by a group that was doing research around a continuum of care. In Androscoggin County, but specifically focused on Lewiston, and they were identifying different programs that were early intervention, sort of middle intervention to high intervention around kids that were at risk for contact with the criminal justice system, and they identified our program as basically the prevention. So before kids need that, having that engaging opportunity is really a first step, and if we remove that, that's not good for our kids. So our ask is that as you're going through the budget process, that you would consider having that local money for the middle and high school program be part of the local budget. I know that Jake and Jana included it in the high school and middle school budget requests. I don't know if it has been cut or if it is still there because I'm not part of those processes. But I hope it's still there, and I hope if it's not that you'll ask questions about that. And I just don't want the program to depend on getting a grant. Like, I feel like we've had it for long enough, and if we can give that basic, those bare bones that we need, the staff, the buses, that's what this pays for, and then the extra pieces, we can continue to apply for that 21st century funding to supplement the basic needs. And then for the programs at Connors, Geiger, and McMahon, that's the amount, $86,250, that the grants are getting cut for this year. So in order to sustain the programming at the level that we have it for this year, we would need that extra money. And I'm going to say that if we don't have it, going back to this chart, $225,000 is a really big ask. It's also a really big difference in my program budget. And I can't imagine being able to run this program with that much less funding. And I think about it and I'm like, my heart is breaking because I love this work so much and I know how important it is for our kids. But we're not going to be able to afford our staff next year. We're not going to be able to bus kids home. We're going to be held to that as a grant requirement, and we're not going to have enough money to do it. So I asked Todd's permission to come tonight and talk to you about that because I really want you to see from my perspective how necessary this is for our students.
Turn the lights back on, and then anybody that has a couple of questions or any questions for Jen can do so. Anybody from the committee?
Is the design of the grant, the way it tapers off year after year, is that to encourage the district to become self-sustainable? Okay, thank you.
I believe this was asked, and this isn't for you, Jen, of Bobby, maybe during the last committee term, if it's possible to get the number of grants that Lewiston Public School receives and the dollar amount, and that's part of the budget process? Excellent. I knew you would deliver.
Can I ask who you report to? Okay. It's one thing I noticed in your numbers are kind of surprising, and for the amount of money that you operate with, it's significantly disproportionate when you take a look at what's being spent at elementaries as opposed to the numbers that we have at the middle school and the high school. So we're talking over 2,000 students, but very, very small funding for that level. Why so much more? Yeah, I know there's 5 years as opposed to 3, but even if you take into the average, why so much more for the elementaries as opposed to the high school and the middle school?
So the original grant for the middle and high school was $300,000, and the $129,135.86 is the amount that it was cut to in year 5, and we didn't add in through local money what was lost. And there's a little bit of money that we get from Title I, Title IV. We had some Title III funding in the past that we don't have anymore, but it isn't significantly more than what you see on the screen. So the answer to your question is basically like we didn't do the sustainability work to keep the original program going. And so the numbers that you see for the elementary schools are because we have new grants for the elementary schools, but now those grants are getting cut. So if we don't add in the extra money, then the program is going to fall short. And we're already, with the money that we have, struggling to meet the numbers of students that we're supposed to be serving under the grant requirements, because what this money pays for is supposed to supplement, not supplant, but past practice has been to use it as like the funding. So when we do that, it's hard for us to meet the state requirements, even to keep the grant going. Like my staff members are supposed to have groups of 12, but they have groups of like 25. We have students with behaviors that really we could handle if we had the staff capacity that we could. They're not like high level misbehaviors happening. They're pretty simple things, but because the staff member has 25 kids, it's hard to manage 25 kids who, you know, have just walking out of the room, talking back, those kinds of things.
Thank you, Ms. Carter,
Thank
as
you.
always, for your presentation. And I think it's important for us to think about when we consider the grant process and when we get grants that they can go away at any time. So it's really important. I like how you outlined the sustainability factor, because at some point the funding could get cut and you have a lot of people and students who depend on those programs. So building in smaller chunks as you go to help save everything in the end, so it's not like is a smart thing to do. So thank you so much for all that information.
Thank you for
Appreciate
listening
it.
to me.
Microphone. You're gonna go up there anyway. Agenda item number 9, to receive a presentation on social emotional learning in LPS. Aisha Hall will present.
Hi. Thank you for your patience. So obviously this will be my first time presenting to you all. So again, thank you for your patience. Thank you. All right. So you all met me a few weeks ago. My name is Aisha Hall. I was hired as the Social Emotional Learning and Equity Resource Coordinator. I will say it has been a fun 3 weeks. It has been full. I've learned a lot, but we have a lot more to learn and a long way to go. One of the things that I felt was really important in this process of figuring out, observing, and discovering where we are as a district with social emotional learning is that our grown-ups need to know what social emotional learning is and what it entails. And so this, as quickly as I can, I'm going to hopefully give you an opportunity to explore what that means and what it looks like for our district. Okay, so I also have a 2-minute video, if you mind, bear with me, to give you some input on what social emotional learning is.
Social emotional learning is a center.
I'll wait. No worries.
Tools that kids need to be resilient, to be problem solvers, be good people.
SEL is really about the holistic development of young people.
SEL is trying to bring balance to the individual and what are the personal competencies you need to develop to be successful. How do you pull that all together so that kids can relate and navigate the world more effectively?
The myth was that knowledge was information that could be bolted onto a brain like any other kind of mechanical part. The truth is knowledge is constructive. The truth is all learning is relational. The truth is that emotion drives attention and attention drives learning.
Social and emotional learning is about how you do school. It's about what the student experiences, what the student learns, how teachers teach.
You can think about schools and classroom, out-of-school time spaces, families, etc., as places where there's an exchange of knowledge about the world, knowledge about yourself, and knowledge about the other persons that you're interacting with. All of those kinds of experiences, I think, help form and expose and shape the ways in which young people understand themselves and other people.
You start talking about the whole child. Does your child understand self-awareness? Do they understand social knowledge? They make good decisions. Are they responsible? And then we start talking about what that applies to academics and looking at all the essential skills we need them to be successful in life.
children learn when their heart is open, engaged, connected, and filled with purpose.
Learning is magical, and through SEL, we can create conditions that allow all kids to access that magic.
I hope that stops on its own. I bet it doesn't. Sorry. So again, thank you. So I wanted to show that video because it really sums up like what social emotional learning is at a base level. And I also want to say that CASEL, the collective of academic social and emotional learning, they have been collecting data on how we learn to learn, how we socialize, how children and adults gain emotional intelligence for the last, I think, 25 years. And so for our district, I feel strongly about using their frameworks, and so that's where we'll be getting most of our information that isn't directly about our district. That's where we'll be getting our information. So what they have found out is this is no longer something we can just hope happens for our kids and ourselves as adults. Like I said, CASEL's been doing this for 20 years, and they understand that learning is social and learning is emotional. Not only that, we have the long-term proof and research-based evidence to support that. It, like it says, it helps reduce poverty, improve economic mobility, and as we know, some of our issues in our community center around poverty, center around that economic improvement, understanding who we are and where we're going as a child is important to understanding what poverty means to us as an individual as well as socially. And we talked about climate change as well. We need our students to actually know themselves, know how to get along with each other, know how to solve a problem in order to tackle something as big as climate change. So what has the lack of SEL costed us? You get a lot of percentages going on in these meetings, so I won't bog you down with that. But as you can see, these are really important. 18% of our population is diagnosed with anxiety. That's diagnosed. That's clinical. That means that more than that, suffering with those issues of anxiety. 25% of kids ages 13 to 18 have been diagnosed with anxiety. And that 60% of college students reporting overwhelming anxiety is amazing to me, but I believe that I may have left out the fact that that included the students as well as their faculty. So obviously we have a really big issue. And so when I'm thinking about our district and how we're going to implement SEL, our common emotional regulation as adults really sticks out to me. And so I put that in there because we're not coping well. So it's really going to be hard to teach a child how to deal with a difficult situation. And it's difficult to forward a mission of teaching and promoting peace, of learning about equity, if we're not able to, as adults, we're not able to cope as and give them those skills that we're asking them to acquire. So I'd like to read off those common emotion regulation skills for adults. We ignore, we avoid, deny, suppress. Wishful thinking and procrastination, that's one of my favorites that if I'm not working hard, that's where I go. And also displacing. Aggression, drugs, and alcohol is a big problem locally in our community. And those poor habits that we overlook, we tell our kids to get good sleep, we tell them to eat well, but we too are not practicing those same habits that we're asking them to come up with on their own. So I really think that over the time that we're here, or the time that I'm here, learning and discovering, I agree with CASEL. They've said that their biggest priority this coming year is dealing with the adults adult learning, and really giving us the opportunity as adults to build our skills so that we're able to help our students more effectively. So I wanted to make sure that I put the actual CASEL definition for social emotional learning. We use acronyms a lot in this town. And over the last 3 weeks, I've had to decode a lot of those acronyms. And I find that a lot of the times when we are using those acronyms and we're using them in conversation, everybody may not have the same understanding of what that means. And so I thought it important, and I've been practicing and studying, because I say SEL a lot. I don't usually say social emotional learning. I use SEL as an acronym, but I find myself needing to break it down for myself, and I thought it'd be necessary to break it down for you all. So social emotional learning, or SEL, is a process through which children and adults acquire the effect and effectively apply the knowledge, attitudes, and skills necessary to understand and manage emotions, achieve positive goals, feel and show empathy for one another, and establish and maintain positive relationships and make healthy decisions. So basically, these are a set of experiences. We talk about SEL curriculum a lot too, and I want to make sure that we're all clear that we're talking about a curriculum, but with SEL it is unique because the set of experiences that would make up a curriculum come with talking about climate change, also comes with our after-school programming, as well as their experiences at home. So the mindset for lifelong learners, which we all support, that's something that when we think about social emotional learning, we have to keep that in mind, that we're still learning how to work with each other. We're still learning to be self-aware. So our self-awareness if we don't have self-awareness, it's going to be hard to socialize with others, and it's going to be hard if we don't socialize with others to make responsible decisions, to make changes that affect our community. So like I said, skill sets are what make achievement in reading and STEM possible. I always say, if you could be the smartest kid in the room, but if you're not able to cope, handle your emotions, or get your point across to someone who needs to know it because you don't like them or because you're not used to them, it's not going to mean anything to you. So like I said, CASEL, this Collaborative of Academic, Social, and Emotional Learning, they've been on a mission for a while to use evidence-based practices throughout 20 school districts. This is now, they didn't start out that big, but it's growing. 20 school districts and 1.7 million students they've been following, watching to gather the information to build their framework. And that's the framework that we'll be using going forward. So I have handouts as well, people. Hold, please. That I put one of the framework wheels in your handouts so that you can all get familiar with the pieces and get familiar with where you fit in that framework. Because as you can see, it starts at the home and the community, goes into the schools, and then it gets to the classroom. And so you all as community members and supporters are a vital part of what happens with our social emotional learning program throughout the district. Without you, it's probably not going to work out the way we think it's going to work out. It won't be as successful. So I just handed you all a self-assessment. And this self-assessment is for teachers and community members. They do have an out of school time assessment, and it just gives you an opportunity to look at where you are with your social and emotional skills. And like I said, one of the things that CASEL has discovered and they're really focused on is the skills of the grown-ups in the situation, the skills of the people, the trainers, the teachers, the parents, their skills as far as where they are on that CASEL wheel and how competent they are with those components. And so you don't have to look at those now for the sake of time. These are a couple of a few questions that you will find in there, but these are some of the competencies that you all are expected to know and that you are expected to know so that you're able and capable of teaching our students. I encourage others to tell me how my actions affected them. Just give yourself a time to reflect on what that means to you, and if you rarely, sometimes, or often have that opportunity to encourage others, and if you do so. For adaptability, I am modify my thinking in the face of new information and realities. And as a new Mainer, and getting used to the culture of Maine, I've found that rarely, sometimes, often is something I've had to reflect on. A lot of those questions, that one especially. I understand the guiding values and unspoken rules that operate among people. Like I said, as an outsider, I've really had to reflect on that for myself. And if y'all can't see it, this is for y'all. I'm able to openly admit my mistakes and shortcomings to myself and others. And the final one, which is in the problem solving or problem identification and situational analysis, which falls under responsible decision making. I recognize the need for change, to challenge the status quo, and to encourage new thinking in my team and community. And so, as an adult, hearing a student come up here and talk about climate change and hold us accountable to what we're supposed to be doing, I think it's very, very important that we're reflecting on where we are with those components. And I believe that going forward with the district, that's going to be something that we rely on heavily, like training for our teachers, because we can't hold students accountable for something that we can't teach them. So I wanted to go through the components of self-awareness, self-management, so the ability to accurately recognize one's emotions, ability to regulate one's emotions. We'll go on for the sake of time. And social awareness, the ability to take perspective and empathize with others from diverse backgrounds and cultures, and to understand social and ethical norms for behavior, and recognize family, school, community resources and supports. And I read that one in its entirety because, like I said, if you don't know yourself, it's going to be hard for you to know somebody else. And I feel that we're really, pressed to jump right into SEL and get our programming going. And it's important to do so, but I read that one because it's going to take a lot of self-awareness to get to that piece, not just for our students, but for us as adults as well. And again, relationship skills, the ability to maintain a healthy and rewarding relationships. We won't be able to solve any problems if we don't have the ability to do that. And we won't, just thinking on the adult level, we won't be able to solve the problems for our children and in our schools if we aren't really working on our own relationship skills. And again, going back to responsible decision making, and we're on climate change, we're on that heavy, and it is a huge problem. In order to help solve those problems, we really have to focus on social emotional learning and development in our schools as well as in our community and as a whole. So just over the next few months, as the coordinator, I'm still in the discovery phase. I still feel that training our adults, cultivating SEL mindsets are going to be really important to build a sustainable SEL program district-wide, and developing sustainable building-based plans. So I've been doing my tours, going to each school, talking to the school administrators, as well as some of the teachers, and hopefully I'll get an opportunity to talk to some of the students about what they're experiencing and what social emotional learning looks like for them. And that's where we'll be until, like I said, July. I know we're doing a lot of things, then we can do a lot of things with social emotional learning and development right now, but in order to develop that sustainability and to really change the minds and to really change our community and see social emotional learning in its entirety and to improve, we're going to do a lot of work on the front end, getting ready for that shift and that change. So I think that's it. Yeah, that's all, people. Thank you. And now it's time for questions, because I could go on and on about social emotional learning, and I could, but I know we don't have time for that. So if you have any direct questions about my experience over the last 3 weeks, about social emotional learning and development in general, or some specific questions.
Thank you so much for this, and I'm sorry I was not here for the vote to bring you in, but fully support, of course.
Felt the support.
So one question that just kind of came up, especially with that last slide, looking at continuous school improvement, what kind of coordination might be expected or needed from the CSIP coordinator, who we also hired within the past year?
There's one of those acronyms again.
Oh, Continuous School Improvement Program? Is that the P?
How would we, I was going to say, how would we support it? I want to say that the data has been very, very helpful from our coordinator. I have contacted her a lot over these last 3 weeks, just asking about as we talked about bullying last week. I wanted those numbers right away to see what is our baseline? What are we working with? How can we improve? And so she's been amazing in that sense. She's also been very supportive in telling me where I should be going and who I should be looking to talk to. I've gotten that a lot from a lot of the community, but having the data to lead my my direction has been really, really helpful.
I just want to reflect that those two seem really entwined with each other, and so I'm glad that you've already been connecting, and that you're also taking a site-based approach to the way that she is. So just really pleased to hear where you're at now.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much. You know, we've heard a lot about social emotional learning over the last couple, 2-3 years. This is the first time that we've been presented with, hey, we need to train our adults first on how, like, it was just an eye-opener for,
I was very nervous
for the
to say
board
that.
to be like, oh, okay, we're starting from the base, not trying to make our kids think that they have to be one way when they haven't even been taught how to be one way, or, and just dealing with the teachers and how to manage them. So thank you. That was very nice.
And if I can respond with that comment, and yours as well, some of the data that I've been pulling up was from our climate survey to see where teachers are feeling the burn. And a lot of the times, I guess a trend in the response is that they don't feel supported, and they don't feel like when they're in the situation with a student that they don't have the support. And what I translate that as is we need to train them, because they are the resource that they're looking for. If they had an opportunity to have a meta moment, for example, which is something that we talk about with self-awareness, to find their best self in that moment and to deal with a student according to what they believe is their best self, they probably will be able to take a breath and deal with it in a different way, as opposed to sending the kid to the office or sending them somewhere else to deal with the issue, whatever that issue may be.
Aisha, thank you so much for that presentation. I think it's important that the public and the committee understands that our plan next year for district-wide professional development that will be delivered by our instructional leaders, which is our principals across the entire district, is solely around social and emotional learning. If we want to talk about improving test scores, coming from a turnaround principal, I will tell you, the secret is stop chasing test scores. If you really want to improve test scores, front load your instruction with relationship building, whether that takes from August through October. Build up that working memory, and our students will fly. We do know it's not a magic bullet. We know that it's going to take a long time for us to get there. Over the course of the next school year, 10 months, we'd like to work through all 5 of those domains, roughly about 2 months per domain, so our educators are familiar with what do I do to help intertwine self-awareness, self-management, social awareness, relationship building, and responsible decision-making into every one of my lessons. And that's how Lewiston will grow. So I appreciate your informing the committee tonight. about the work that you've already done, and just want to commend you for assimilating to our district seamlessly.
And I'll say the handout that I gave you, I did slide through the slides, but that information is on the back of that handout for you. Thanks.
Cruising along. Agenda item number 10, to receive and approve the technology department's vision and goal plans. Dave Terrio will present.
Oh, yep. I got an opportunity tonight to sit and watch, and all of a sudden I heard the hum in the sound system, and I went, aha, that's what it was. So, it actually has to do with cell phones and computers that are close to the microphone. Because all of a sudden I'm listening and I hear that as soon as Aisha had put her computer close to the microphone, and the cell phone right next to it too. So a little helpful hint, moving forward, if you can avoid putting the computer right up next to the microphone, I see you moving them now, and also putting your cell phone or whatever, we should be all set. All right. So this is the culmination of many, many months of work by a lot of very dedicated people. To produce the, not the email, to produce the tech plan. And I'll give you a little background as we go. Let me get the code up here. See that? I just hit that PowerPoint and here we go. I heard that sound right off the bat. Yep. All right. Let's see. Okay. So I'll probably have to hit the lights one more time if you would. It's a good thing he has nice long arms over there, so that works out well. So Lewiston Public Schools, the technology plan, and if you look at the dates, it's 2019 to 2022. That's because we started this process almost a year ago. And with a few changes along the way, with a new superintendent coming in, with summer vacation coming along in the midst of that as well, and then finally we got a new school board coming in place and developing some objectives and some goals and so forth. So it was kind of bringing all of that together, and we finally got it all together for you. And so we're really excited. It's, as you saw probably in your packets, it's a 42-page document with lots of charts and graphs and appendices. So we'll kind of go through it pretty quickly at the slideshow, but there's a lot there. First, we developed a district technology vision, and we sat down as technology personnel in the district and thought about also the end users and so forth, and what's that vision for the technology department in general and in the district as a whole. To become a district where all students have equitable access to quality technology, a thing we have really worked on for the last couple of years, maybe 2-3 years, and I think it's really the support of the school committee that has provided us with the opportunity to provide Chromebooks to a lot of students and make sure that they had dependable devices, because we really were pretty far, back a ways as I came to these meetings and proposed budgets and technology plans. You were looking at devices that were 8, 10, 12 years old. And when the teacher was teaching and the devices were older than the students they were teaching, that was a significant problem we had. All district leaders support meaningful technology professional development, and we've made some real strides there as well when we have the Inspire Ed Days and so forth, where we have lots of training and everybody gets involved. That's really a neat thing. And then, and the one we're really striving for in the district is that all teachers integrate technology to its fullest educational potential. And one of the three real big keys to that are, number one, having the devices in the hands of kids so they're readily available. The teachers can really see that tool's there for them to use every single day. It's also having the support staff, as far as the technology support staff, to be able to manage those devices and to make sure that people have a good experience with them, whether that's students, teachers, or staff. So that's really important, and I think you remember a couple of years back I also came to you and said we were in a crunch as far as staffing, and we are really in a bad spot, And it was really make or break time in a lot of ways to supporting technology. And luckily you did support that, and so we have the staff now to manage those devices and keep everything going the way it should. The authors of the plan really were kind of a core group that met, and I'll go through like Fridays and so forth, but you can see that it's a mixture of IT tech support people, from myself to Tom Seeley, the network administrator and our systems administrator, but also the educational people involved every day with teachers and students, which is Jeff Padgett, who's one of our tech integration specialists, Sarah Irish, who also is one, and Jason, and they serve at various levels, elementary, middle school, and high school. And of course, Alicia Biggs volunteered, wanted to jump right in. It's a perfect fit for her to work with our group. She has been a former tech integrator herself. So that was kind of neat to have that core group of people that could always meet on a Friday from 10 to 12, 12:30, 1. I had to kick them out sometimes because I had other things to get done, but they would just work diligently with me to kind of get this plan together. Timeline, I'll kind of go through this quickly. What we did is we surveyed the entire staff last February with the Bright Byte survey tool that the MLTI provided, which was a great resource to us. It was free to us to be able to survey the students, the staff, the parents, and bring that data into the plan and use it for our plan. We began working on the new plan last spring. Spent 2 hours or more each Friday working on the plan. Each building principal was sent a series of questions later on, and we gathered some more additional information from the building principals to make sure we get input from each of the schools, along with the Bright Bytes data that we had. After that, we went into different sessions where we worked longer days and so forth to kind of really bring this thing to fruition. And then afterwards, we held a meeting here at Dingley in May to make sure that we would provide an opportunity for any staff members who wanted to come and talk about the draft plan and so forth, and we could answer any questions they had. And unfortunately, the work was interrupted by summer. We had kind of, when Superintendent Finn came on board, we had to get together and talk a little bit about plan. Him and I did that. And I also met with Bobby Avery, and we talked about the plan as well. And then finally here, we waited to get that new mission and goals and to be able to bring that into the plan and update the plan so that we knew when we brought it to you, all those pieces were together in the plan. And so that's what we did to kind of get it here. So what's in the plan itself? And I'm going to give you the highlights without going through 42 pages here, but basically you'll find a table in there that's called the Shared Leadership Table, which demonstrates how Lewiston Public Schools achieves the broad representation of the school community to provide student learning through technology. The table is much longer than what you see here. I'm just kind of putting an example here, but example might be the plan itself. Who basically has the oversight of the Lewiston Public Schools District Technology Plan? And you can see some of the decision makers as far as the plan goes, and then also who are those people that are actually going to do the implementation of the plan itself. And you can see some of the people involved in there. And then down here, who takes care of the annual update of the plan and so forth. So if you go further in the table, you'll find lots of other technology areas and who has decision making in that and who also is involved in the implementation of it. So it really kind of lays things out pretty nicely if you want to see who's involved. And that's really what I just said there, so we'll skip to the next one. So district-wide technology priorities and objectives. So the LPS technology plan outlines who may be best suited for designing and implementing technology solutions needed to achieve the technology priorities and meet the district goals, because that's what we're really trying to do. We're supporting teaching and learning, and by doing that, we want to meet the goals of the district. The plan has lots in it. It's quite robust in the sense that the plan suggests who might be involved in the scheduling of, let's say, professional learning time, providing some instructional resources for teachers, acquiring and deploying technology by the IT staff, updating hardware, upgrading software, improving the network infrastructure, which we've worked very hard to do in the last 4 years, and really kind of like, really one of the things we're most proud of, I think, in some of the ways that we kind of brought ourselves from having 1 out of 22 servers being under warranty to a situation now where we have some devices on hand that really kind of provide a good experience for the end user. And actually, just a month ago, we finished the upgrade of the Wi-Fi system for the entire district,
having used E-rate funding, which has saved us 90% of the cost. So it was quite a wonderful thing for us to be able to do, and then also be able to actually have our staff install that for the entire district and not having to contract that out. So it was quite a savings for the district. And then basically ensuring the timely completion of projects and priorities and objectives. So what we did is we basically in this plan looked at what are our district-wide technology priorities in the next 3 years. Which ones of those specific priorities are ones we want to center on at the high school, and are there any unique ones at the high school level? Which ones we want to work on at the middle school level, and finally the elementary level. So we kind of broke it out that way. You're going to see some overlap, obviously, from the district-wide technology priorities and the individual school level priorities. It's kind of a good thing if some of those are overlapping. So one of the things we do in the district-wide priorities is to update the 5-year technology implementation plan, which we'll get to you shortly too as well. That plan is basically the plan we have to make sure that we don't go back in time to a situation where we have devices that are as old as they were. How do we keep that plan, that 5-year implementation plan, make sure that our devices stay up to date, current, and we can keep a refresh cycle going that's going to be, number one, it's going to be budget respectable in the sense of what we can provide, but also it's going to be something that's going to give us a good roadmap. The other thing that we're working very hard on is the app approval process, in which we have actually spent that last year. The two biggest things I think we worked on was the app approval process and also the technology plan. And the app approval process is ready to go. All the pieces are in place. The group has done an amazing work there as well. And now we basically have to find time to roll that out to the staff. And why is that so important? Because we're trying to make sure that we're mindful of student data privacy rights and to protect student data. And that is a momentum that's going throughout the country right now. We have a lot of school districts from California all the way on out that are trying to do exactly that. Not only protect student data, but also protect the data of people who are whose information is being put out there online. So that's a big thing. We're curating and approving a lot of those online teaching resources and then training the teachers how to use it. We also want to make sure that we're constantly reviewing all the IT policies and procedures and start to actually write down more of the standard operating procedures that we want to use in the department. One of the big ones, technology security awareness training. I mean, as a district right now, we have, as you know, phishing attempts that are out there. There's a lot of stuff that's out there right now that's pretty nasty stuff, and I think it really is our job to be mindful of that, to make sure that we find time to train our staff to be aware of some of the security situations that can be brought into that could be a very difficult thing. So we're actually working on putting out some more emails roughly on the phishing attempts and so forth to keep people aware of these things. And then Alicia Biggs was there as well, and Alicia, of course, is working very, very hard to establish a K-12 computer science pathway with other leaders around the state, and we obviously support that, I mean, as a technology department, so that's in our plan. High school. The high school also is part of that app approval process. It's one of the schools that just uses a lot of resources with kids and so forth, and so they are currently wanting to make sure that things are approved and ready to go for teachers to use. And one of the big things that came out of the Bright Bites data was that a lot of the high school teachers wanted more training around the use of multimedia, models, simulations, and animations. A lot of the science teachers were very concerned about the simulations and animations, because one of the things that happen now is that a lot of those science teachers and science professors in colleges created a lot of the simulations and animations using Flash as a base for their technology, and Flash is going out. And so now all of a sudden the horror is, oh my gosh, we're not going to have these animations and simulations that spent hours of time building them. So they're trying to replace those now. And then finally, the technology security awareness training. You're going to hear me say that a lot because of the situation that we're finding ourselves in. And the middle school, continue with one-to-one devices at the end of the current MLTI program. So technically the MLTI program was supposed to end June 2020. which is this coming June, which was kind of a scary thing for a lot of school districts throughout the state because the MLTI program had been around for so long. Well, the state decided to extend through a bridge year portion, extend that program 1 year. And thankfully for us, they did that. That gives us another year to kind of catch our breath. But basically, they will continue the networking, the computers, and so forth. What we have to pick up, which you'll see in the budget, we have to pick up repair, though, of those devices. Yep. Sure. Maine Learning Technology Initiative. And so it's been the one-to-one program in the state of Maine that provided a laptop for all kids at the middle school level for many years, and also was a program that we could buy devices for our teachers at the high school much cheaper than we would have ever been able to buy. So it's that program, and it's scary when you think that all of a sudden your middle schools are going to lose those devices and lose those resources and so forth. So we got another year in the bridge year, and then after that we have to have a plan. Is it going to be a new device? What are we going to go to? So the one big cost for us for next year is simply the upkeep and repair of devices, and we have a little bit in the budget to plan for that too. We may have the opportunity to actually buy some of those devices that other schools turn in, and if we can get in the lottery and get lucky, we might be able to buy some of those for $48 a piece and be able to provide those as our spares and so forth. So we're looking at those types of opportunities. Then one of the big things the Bright Light survey does is it talks a lot about the 4 C's, which are 21st century skills of communication, collaboration, critical thinking, and creativity, which I think fall right in line with some of the other discussions we've had in the district. I know Superintendent Finn talks a lot about innovation, and when you look at those terms right there, that's really wraps around that exact topic of innovation. And then integrate technology to its fullest potential through expeditionary learning. As you know, Janimates and the middle school doing a lot with expeditionary learning, and the use of technology rolls right into that very nicely, and the kids get excited about being able to take their devices, do the research they need for their projects and other things, and then present their materials to other people. Oh, isn't she cute? I just saw that picture and I thought she was adorable, so she went on my slide for sure. All right. Elementary school, improved student access to quality devices K through 6. I'm excited. I think we're just about there. We got 3rd and 4th grade is the only 2 areas where we have older devices now, so I'm really hoping we can kind of clean that up. Increased digital citizenship education. I just think we got to start early at that level and really do some training around it, because that makes all the difference in the world in how they handle those devices later on, social media, all those things. Add an additional tech integrator at the K-6 level. We have 1 tech integrator at the K-6 level, and he has 5 schools right now. And so when you think of Connors and some of these, and Montello and Geiger and the big schools, and we have 1 tech integrator for those 5 schools. Adult education priorities. Bill Grant talked a lot about providing more mobile options to replace desktops. And so forth, and we're trying to do that. We're pulling a lot of desktops out of our district. We're actually replacing with laptops, because we've actually been able to provide some really decent laptops to teachers, and it just provides them the opportunity to move about the classroom and do some other things with students. Explore and implement more distance learning options is another thing that Bill really wants to do in his program. LHS had 1, but it's a technology priority, but it's a big one. It provides CTE students, secondary and adult, access to current technology in all program areas. And if Rob was here tonight, he could tell you that they've done a really great job doing that. And they just want to make sure that those resources are there for their students as well. Now, additional sections of the report, without my going through them all with you, there's a section on collaboration and involvement, which identifies the various groups and their involvement in technology decision-making. So you can go in, there's lots of good information if you're trying to understand who makes those decisions and who works together on accomplishing certain things within the technology realm of the district. This one I'm most proud of, and I really encourage you to go to the report and to look at the recent district-wide technology improvements that we've done. We've had real good momentum, and we've done a really nice job in the last 4 years or so. So I really encourage you to kind of go look at some of those things there. Plan professional development for technology. The team really sat down and thought through what are the really important pieces for professional development that we should be doing in the next 3 years, and that's in there and part of that plan, so you really want to take a look at that. And then the proposed infrastructure, devices, and hardware, so kind of wrapping right in with that 5-year technology implementation plan that I mentioned earlier. Funding, this is the key slide, of course, so everybody gets to, but current technology purchases are made using multiple funding sources. So the primary source of the funding is through the local school budget for technology. Secondary sources include grants, computer science grants, E-rate funding has been huge. We've gotten so much done, $228,000 worth of E-rate funding last year, which is really neat. And some Title I funds as well, and I'm hearing now that we might be even able to use a little bit of Title IV monies as well, so that really is maybe a little bit helpful. Other than that, though, teachers are actually going out on their own to try and find money to provide technology and so forth, to get some few items for their classes and so forth. So the primary source of funding for technology definitely is the local school budget. I think it is in every district in the state. Proper funding for technology is critical for the success of the plan. So when you look at the components of the plan and you look what's there and so forth, that is really kind of the innovation piece that we want to go with. That's what we need to actually make sure that we have, like I said before, the proper devices for kids, the support in the sense of personnel, and also in the end be able to make sure that we meet our goals and objectives. And I won't go through a lot of this real quick. The plan includes a table that shows all the devices, how old they are, how many there are, what school they're at. So that's some good information right there. Also has a table, another table you don't see here, but another table that shows the major software and subscriptions that we use throughout the district. So if you're kind of wondering what big software packages we use, it's listed in there as well. There's a glossary, so when you're reading through a tech plan and you're going, what in the world does that mean, these tech people? There's actually a glossary in there we thought would be useful that will explain some of those key terms for you along the way. So, and then finally, the appendices has all kinds of documents that kind of support what's in the plan. So that's pretty much what we got for the plan. We're seeking your approval of the plan this evening. So if you have questions, I'll be absolutely happy to answer any of those for you.
It's not a vote, but I wanted to start by saying that when I first got on the committee, the first go-round, I was on the technology subcommittee, and the amount of work that gets done and the depth, like, all I had to do was go look at this assessment they had done. I mean, it explains everything, so I want to thank you and your team of folks, which is an impressive team of people.
I have a good crew. I really
Yes, and it just shows all the different aspects of people that are working with technology in our schools and how they get to be involved in this process, and like the glossary, all that stuff. Thank you so much. That really is super, super helpful. I will open it up for questions. Ms. Ray.
Thank you, and thank you, Dave, for this. I read through the plan and think it's great. One thing that I'm curious about, and it might go one way or the other for who this question is for, one of the recommendations is to re-implement the technology subcommittee that you were just talking about, Chair Roy. And so I just want to understand, like, who calls for that? And is that something that this committee is interested in doing at this point, or is that later down the road that will be needed? One thought that I had without hearing the presentation first was, is it appropriate to go through the facilities subcommittee at this point? So I just wanted to hear perspectives on that if possible.
We had the technology subcommittee for a while, and then it kind of went away. I was told it was gone. It had gone away. Not something I asked to get rid of. Let's put it that way. So it did. I have no qualms bringing it. If somebody decides it's going to come back, I'll be excited to be a part of that, without a doubt, because it's a chance for me to get to share some of the good things that we do. So I'd be happy to do that. When we have a need in the district, as far as a larger need, like we had to put together a new tech plan. So what we did is we got a group of people that we could put together as a small committee that could actually get some real work done, that had some good knowledge and so forth. And they were that group that were able to really kind of sit down and put some serious work into it. So we called that kind of an ad hoc subcommittee. Technology committee, to be able to do that. Yeah.
I do think it's important to have school committee members represented on those sorts of subcommittees. Was there one on that committee?
On the district
plan.
subcommittee, it was building principles. I know Rob was on there, Jake was on there, Monique was on there, I was on there, Bill Webster was on there. If you remember right, on those committees, it was basically you signed up for which committee you wanted to be on. And so, yeah, it started out as kind of a smaller committee, but not that we couldn't build in some other representation on that committee.
I just think if we do move towards that model, again, I don't know who's calling for the ad hoc committee to start. It needs school committee representation.
So I think there's a difference between the kind of committee that we had last time, which was to go through specifically the assessment that was given because it was so large and so many resources were needed. And through the process, for me, we were able to advocate the extra manpower, basically. And then after that, it was just the people implementing things. So at this point, I wouldn't say there was. If there became a need, like MLTI goes away and we have to kind of figure out how as a district we're going to deal with something like that, an ad hoc committee and a school committee member would probably be part of that. But like the internal work of implementation is what's happening now within the building. So that's my take on it.
No? I think it times out of something. I think you're right. So anyway, I think your example is spot on to when we actually usually call for a committee to sit down and go through those. Yep.
2 questions. The first one is, what animal does your budget look like? Are you wholly contained in an article by itself, or are you separated individually across the board?
2 articles. Article 5 is our primary funding, the article that we put most of our budget requests in. But a year or so ago, the state said that anything that has to do with one-to-one technology for students had to go in Article 1. So we made that change, and those things go in Article 1 now. But it's Article 5 and Article 1.
Okay, so it's safe to say there's going to be 2 articles to look at for your budget.
Yep.
The second question is, I'm not shy to show up at the schools and talk with the kids and see how things are going. And I'm so old-fashioned, it's ridiculous. So I ask them a lot of technology questions. So I'm interested to see how that applies. For the most part, as there's positives, but I'm beginning to see something that's beginning to concern me. And that is in all 3 levels. I have talked to kids about the Chromebooks, and across the board consistently, there's been concern about connectivity, the ability to download certain things, the ability to use it, and some of them even say they don't even bother anymore. So I guess, 1, is there something going on with the service? 2, what is your troubleshooting organization? How does it work? Because kids may not necessarily be comfortable with bringing something forward. They may think they're using it wrong when there could be something going on there. And I guess I'll leave it at that.
Yeah. So a couple different things come into play there. One, we have one of the right now, we just finished the new Wi-Fi update as of, like I said, a month ago. We have one of the most robust Wi-Fis probably most any schools around. So the answer is we have an incredible network to the point where the access points in the ceilings, we actually have to dial them way back because they're so powerful. So that's not the issue as far as connectivity with the Chromebooks. If the Chromebooks are on a secure student Wi-Fi, so they are not throttled down in any way than what the adults get on the LPS staff secure network. They're just segregated, so it's the same. So if they're having trouble with connectivity, I think sometimes what happens is when a student brings in their own device from home, it may be more the concern sometimes, because if you bring in your own device, you're on the public side, and that is throttled down. Because what we're doing is we're making sure that the bandwidth is there for our educational needs by having it on a secure network. And the problem with the public side of it is every single kid and every adult practically is walking in the building with one of these. And if it's set to pick up the Wi-Fi, it does. and it picks up the public now. It used to pick up the secure. Actually, we had one, and everybody's picked up the same one. We segregated that in the last few years. We've been working really hard to do that, so that now these don't interrupt the school day as far as connectivity. The Chromebooks, when you talk to kids, is sometimes you kind of tease out from them really what the issues are. A Chromebook is a very basic device. A Chromebook is not a MacBook Air or a PC that's fully functional. It's a device that provides them with connection to the internet. It provides them access to Google Apps for Education, which they allow them a full software package with that, so that they have spreadsheets, they have docs, they have the ability to create forms and so forth. So they have, and presentations, but that's not as robust as maybe the computer they're using at home. And so when they got that computer at home and they can do all those great things, and now they come into school and they have a Chromebook, the Chromebook will allow them to get their schoolwork done, but won't give them all the bells and whistles. I'll tell you one of the things we did this year, because we're trying to add functionality all the time. We ended up doing a pilot at the high school for WeVideo, it's called, which provides that iMovie type of software that allows them to create videos and so forth, which has really excited a lot of kids that couldn't do that before. So we're looking at that type of thing as well. So if kids are having trouble with their Chromebooks, we have a staff at the high school. We have a Chromebook office at the high school, 2 technicians that work there every day and solve those problems, give them a loaner if they need a loaner. So they give them a device, make sure that they have a device. Some kids opt out of a Chromebook because they want to use their own personal device. Well, when they bring that own personal device, that Mac or that PC in, now they're on the public, and they're fighting those cell phones. So there's a little bit of that frustration that you're probably hearing. But the reason we do that is to protect, the educational side of it, where we're using the devices for their education. So.
All right, so as it stands now, you have appropriate, what's the bandwidth?
Yep.
In the entire system?
Absolutely.
Okay, and there's not any needs for any upgrades to the Chromebooks?
No.
In your opinion?
No, I don't. The Chromebooks right now, and I'll tell you the difference. 4 years ago, we had old white MacBooks, and you turn those old white MacBooks on, they were 8 to 10 years old, and the wheel just spun. You sat there, and teachers sat there waiting for kids to be able to get their computers up and running. Some of the PCs, I remember you'd sit there and startup scripts are running, and you'd wait and wait and wait. Talk about frustration. Teachers and kids both said, I don't want to use technology anymore. The Chromebooks have changed the game, actually. Teachers come into the classroom now, and kids open up their Chromebooks, and they're on pretty quickly. So I really, in my sense, in hearing that, I want to get back out there and ask some questions of some of these kids as well, and really, like I said, tease out what that issue is with some of those kids. Because quite honestly, you go in a room right now and you turn it on. I'll give you a great example. We just did access testing, and we did NWA testing twice this year. And you talk to the building principals, and they are thrilled with the Chromebooks for that testing, because they turn them on, they click a button, and those kids are on, and they're testing all over the district. And we didn't have to shut down anything as far as services, like streaming services, to be able to provide that level of service to take the test. And in the past, we've actually had to turn off YouTube. We have to turn off all these other streaming services just to be able to do testing. And we didn't have that at all this year.
Okay, so thank you for that explanation. And working in another district, we have much more freedom and better access in this district to Wi-Fi than others. And kids would prefer a different device than a Chromebook. I'll tell you that by having one teenager who does not opt to take the Chromebook because it doesn't have all the things he likes on it. And so I think it just depends on how much technology a child has had, so their experience comparing one to the other. Sometimes that's the issue. Chromebooks, you can't download stuff. You can't save your own stuff. It's all based in the cloud. So it's different in that way than some of the other devices, but it does function well for getting educational stuff done. So I just wanted to put that plug out there, because I've heard my own child say, Chromebooks suck, but they don't. They really don't. Mm-hmm. It's affordable too. All right, we got to get going. We're way behind. Okay, fine.
One comment, Dave,
Yeah.
just for some feedback here. Your presentation utilized our new logo, which is great, but I noticed that the vision's right across the bottom there. You tied everything you said back into what our strategic plan goals are. So that's the gold standard for what we'd like to see. So if you could share that with others, that would be phenomenal.
Okay,
Appreciate
absolutely.
that,
Yeah, thank you.
All right. Agenda item number 11, to receive information regarding the school committee workshop held on February 22nd. Superintendent Todd Finn will present.
So we met on February 22nd, which was on Saturday. Want to commend everyone for showing up to that meeting. On top of the subcommittees and regular meetings we have, that adds a few more hours a month. But great work was done. Just so the public is aware what took place on that day right here in this room. We had a training by committee member Ray on the fundamentals of understanding Robert's Rules of Order. Phenomenal job with that. We appreciate that. We also had an opportunity to reflect on the FY20 budget process for those of the committee members who were actually here for that, and I was not here for that, but Bobby Avery walked us through that. We had an opportunity to discuss an understanding of the process that's gone into our FY21 budget, and the committee was able to provide some input as to how the school committee would like to see this year's budget presented to them. So it took about almost 2.5 hours, but time well spent, and very, very proud of the committee for coming out on Saturday.
Even though there weren't any pancakes, it was really good.
Muffins, there were lots of muffins.
Sorry, I had to say that. Yeah, it was a really good meeting. Did anybody want to add anything to that? No? Great. Okay, to receive and approve the renewal of LPS Administrator and Director contracts for 2020-2021, Chief Administrative Officer Bobby Avery will present.
Good evening. So in your packet, you have two different forms. One is for the continuing contracts for administrators, and then the other one is for all of the directors, and I think it's called managers at the top. Those are our directors and chiefs and all of that. So this is something that comes before you every single year. The administrator's contract, there is a deadline in which you have to approve that. And so we're right up against that deadline. So I'm sure you've all had an opportunity to look at this. We've moved from a 1-year contract through negotiations to a 3-year contract. And then for anybody that's new to a position, they would receive a probationary contract of 2 years. So that's itemized for you in this worksheet. And it tells you who's going to be receiving a 3-year contract and who is on a continuing probationary contract. And so this has been vetted, and it goes right through the superintendent, and he makes his recommendations, and that's what you have before you. The other worksheet that I just talked about, the managers' contracts, all these folks also have received a 3-year contract. It's just being consistent with what we do for the other administrators. Same concept. The folks that are getting a 3-year are itemized, and then the folks that are on probationary are below that. It's pretty straightforward. Any questions?
Although you just said it's straightforward, I don't think I'm understanding something. So 3-year contracts were awarded last year to many of these folks. Do they end 3 years after the contract starts, or do we reset this process with our vote now?
Yes, it does make sense. So so let's talk about, okay, so you have a 3-year contract, you got it last year, 1 year has gone by, so now you're working on a 2-year. You've got 2 years remaining. And so what this is saying is that the superintendent is recommending to the school committee to add that year onto it. So it's a perpetual 3-year contract. If there's someone that the superintendent does not want to bring back, what he would make a recommendation to the school committee to say, you know, and this isn't the case this year, but he would make a recommendation to the school committee that X person is going to be on a 2-year contract. They would not receive that additional year. Does that make sense?
So, so everyone last year when we approved this had an end date. So what year was last year? 2019. They had an end date of 21. Now everyone will have an end date of, they would have had an end date of 22. Now everyone, if we approve this for 3-year contracts, will have an end date of 23. Could that be added to this document? I did not understand that when we talked about this last year, and definitely didn't understand it prepping for tonight. So my apologies for that, but I think that's a helpful clarification. And I don't think that's what was explained to us last time. So maybe other members, continuing members, have an opinion on that.
So as part of the negotiations team that helped with this process, it was very confusing. It is, because it's a continuous thing, so it's always a 3-year contract, unless you're on probationary. So you see one, then they'll get the 3-year next time. So, but the continuous yet only 3 years is very confusing. But it's the law.
So every year, we will reapprove a rolling 3 years, unless for some reason they don't. And then they stay with the original 3 years, so then they would go to 2, and then they would go to 1. So they would still work out that 3 years. They just wouldn't get the new renewal of a new 3 years. Yeah, that's really weird.
What is the law that requires us to do it this way?
Well, it's the law that says by April, whatever, the contract. There's, yeah, by March. But that's what you said where the state requires that we do it. No, I don't know what I said. There's
Really good though.
Yeah. It was just a negotiated contract that we agreed to it.
I thought it was something else, but.
Yeah. Well, there was a deadline. There's a deadline that we have to have these agreed upon. So maybe it's just our contract that says that.
March 1st.
Okay.
So are we able to, I don't foresee what it would be, but let's just say there were issues. I mean, our backs are against the wall right now. We're given something that we have absolutely no wiggle room on. Is there a way to present this earlier next year? If there are concerns that we're able to take it up without being worried about having our backs against the wall?
A good question. And so what happens in that situation is that's fully vetted through the superintendent's office. And so we've had multiple dialogues about this. So before it even gets to the school committee, that's all vetted. So the superintendent is the one that actually does the hiring of these folks. And then that comes before the school committee and you either approve or you don't. But all of that vetting of that happens at the superintendent level first. So if he felt that there was an issue, he would be sure to have that conversation with the school committee. In this case, that's not the case. Does that make sense?
So just sort of a clarifying question off of that. What is the school committee's actual role in this then?
Her role is to approve this. So you either do approve it or you do not.
Is there any way for the school committee to in the future just not have that role if the hiring is de facto made by the superintendent anyways?
No. Agenda. It's the same idea. It's vetted through the superintendent, and if there's any issues, we would know about it. This is the same idea.
I have the same question about the personnel agenda, and why that can't also just be handed over to the superintendent if we're de facto giving him that decision. I don't know if there's a law question or if this is just customary.
So in theory, if one of us had this like groundbreaking knowledge about somebody that you were recommending, then we would be able to say, sort of like the consent agenda, we don't agree with this, and then there'd be a discussion, right? Is that in theory? So it's not really like I mean, you do have the final say, but in theory, there's some kind of provision that we could, right, okay, so that's the purpose.
And that would be something in executive session because it would be a personnel conversation. And if you had something that was, you saw this come out and you wanted to have that discussion, it would be set aside.
I'd like to make a motion to receive and approve the renewal of the LPS administrator and director contracts for 2020 to 2021 with the caveat that they have the dates in it for next time, so we all understand what's happening.
I second that.
Any further discussion about how wackadoo it is? Okay. All those in favor? We got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Opposed? Are you? One opposed? One? Okay, 2 opposed. So this is something that we could have more information on. We can do in a Saturday session. We can do in a workshop. We can have people come and explain this in more depth so that you feel more comfortable with these processes. It's very bizarre. We talked about how it is that you are responsible for everything, but then when it comes to these things, it's just basically check mark. So there's a process put in place to try to get it so that it isn't so cumbersome, because we would be discussing things that we couldn't discuss in public session all the time. There's all kinds of reasons why, but I do agree that it's kind of weird. And unless you're in negotiations, you don't learn as much about this as we did. And even that part about it, we were like, are you sure that's what it's supposed to say? Because the language is bizarre. So I appreciate the conversation. Ms. Whitlow?
Thank you, Ms. Chair. I do remember last year this being a topic just like this at this table. So I understand where you guys are coming from. It's just not clear. But I do, if I can give you any assurance, I just want to say that we hired Mr. Finn to run this district, and we have to trust that he's doing the best for this district, and we are here to oversee it, but he is doing the work with his team. And if we have questions, we should be talking with him and the chair previously to the meeting if we have concerns about the procedure, I would say. But I mean, I don't want people not to ask questions at the table. I think that's important, but just remember that the superintendent is here to run this district, and we are here to just kind of oversee, but we have to trust that he's doing what he needs to be doing.
Agenda item number 13, to receive a report regarding, you're going to get to talk right now, regarding the curriculum committee meeting held on Thursday, 2/2020. Mr. Bergeris Collins.
Sure, I'll keep this as brief as possible. So the curriculum subcommittee met on Thursday. We are going to be taking a broad-based and comprehensive look at professional development and instruction in the district. We discussed preliminary areas of potential interest, but agreed to start with a fact-finding effort by tracing a student's curriculum through the K-12 experience in the district. So we'll be hearing from elementary school building leaders at the next subcommittee meeting to ensure members of the curriculum subcommittee have a solid understanding of what is taught at the elementary school level, when it is taught, what is required by the state, and what we are adding on top of what's required by the state. The subcommittee invites any other members of the school committee or of the public who are interested in receiving an overview of the elementary school curriculum to attend. I'm happy to take any questions, I guess.
Agenda item number 14, report from City Council Representative Ray.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Our 2/18 meeting was canceled due to snow, so we are meeting tomorrow night. A couple of highlights for you all. We'll be introing the new poet laureate for the city. You'll remember last year Victor Zhao was the first, or maybe other way, Zhao Victor was the first poet laureate for our community, and that was a great honor to have him. Also tomorrow, the disposition of Martell, and there will be public comment at this one. I want to thank Ms. Whitlow for coming to the workshop on that, but public comment was not taken then, so it will be tomorrow. And finally, the LCIP, which is the Lewiston Capital Improvement Plan recommendations, will be coming forward from the Finance Committee and the Planning Board. You'll recall that the school committee's capital improvement plan is a part of the larger city's one, and so there will be comment about those items, I am sure. Two personal things, reminder to submit your notes on the bullying policy, JICK, by this Thursday at 4:30 p.m. for it to be included in next week's policy subcommittee. And I owe you all a cheat sheet for Robert's Rules of Order. I know work got out of hand today, so expect that by tomorrow, end of business day. Thanks.
Thank you. And we're going to have that poet laureate here, but we had to wait for you guys to approve the person. They should have been here tonight, but because of snow and whatever, we don't get to. But we will have a chance to hear this wonderful young person. Yes, Mr. Damon.
Just a question, Chairperson or Committee Person Ray. Are they going to take a vote on Martell tomorrow night, or is it just discussion of taking comment?
So we will be, the way it's currently put into our packet is it's a very open motion to take a motion on one of the three proposals because we have not heard from the public yet. So it will be voted upon tomorrow night. After public hearing happens, we will then make the motion and vote, is my understanding.
And agenda item number 15, report from school committee chair. I think you covered stuff from the retreat, and in the interest of time, I'm just going to skip right over to agenda item number 16, report from school superintendent.
Thank you, Ms. Roy. We have the Ignite series, which is the student shadow and focus group, coming up on the 27th to include team feedback. And this month it is at LRTC, so it should be fun. I know that I am in culinary that day. Budget work is well underway. We've got a phenomenal team working hard at that, and we'll be ready to present the overview on the 2nd of March. Our girls hockey team won the state championship, and member Emma Landry is a captain of that team. Gemma is a captain of that. It's late, but we love her, and she's out celebrating right now, and we're not. The boys are entering the playoffs, and they're trying to match that because they're undefeated as well, and so they've been given orders to do so. So they will. And you'll check your email for the superintendent's report that includes a graph to show the attendance trends. I know that Alicia likes graphs for all schools in comparison to a year ago. Some interesting things we're seeing there, and obviously we're trying to get better and better. So it's my report.
Great, thank you. All right, agenda item number 17, school committee community announcements. Anybody got Ms. Parks?
I think this was mentioned at the last meeting, but I wanted to put out another reminder. This Friday night at Geiger, there is the Youth Advisory Council is hosting a forum on bullying at Geiger at, I think it's 6 p.m. 6 to 8 p.m. And that's students running it.
I just want to give a plug that the Androscoggin County Sheriff's Department Alternative Sentencing Program for community sentencing, simple offenses, simple OUI, driving offenses. This is people that are involved in helping out in the community through the sentencing. We managed to paint all of the high school and Montello School, so those walking in can see a fresh new face to the schools. And that was 60 participants, and our estimates are about $40,000 in savings to the school department. So hopefully, we continue that relationship. Yep.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I just want to say that recently the Lewiston baseball and softball have approved, and are creating a Challenger League for kids the ages 6 through 18 in the area with disabilities. It's going to be a really exciting league where kids that don't feel comfortable on the regular baseball field will be able to play anywhere from wheelchair to any type of disability where they just feel like they could use a different setting. And we'll be looking for kids to volunteer to be partners with those kids on the fields to help them be safe. And so I think there's going to be a lot of looking in our schools for kids who want to be involved and be a buddy for those kids. So.
Who do they contact?
They could contact myself, anyone on the Lewiston Little League. That'd be great.
Agenda item number 18, future agenda items.
Hi. Where we saw Ms. Siegel come this evening and talk about climate change, Samantha echoed her concerns. Mr. McCormick, everybody who actually came up today mentioned climate change, and Mr. School Committee Member Majoris Collins has introduced a climate resolution. I'd like to see us take up some sort of vote or discussion on that in the future at our next regular meeting. I do believe it is very urgent, and I think that voting, to adopt or not would be fairly. I think Mr. Majoris Collins has given us all an opportunity. He's sent us an email to give us some comments. I think 2 weeks is reasonable to be voting on something this urgent.
I was, in light of all of the communication that we had tonight on the subject, I was hoping I could propose that we task the Building and Facilities Committee with taking up a project, I guess, to determine areas that we have already made, things that we've already done in our district to work towards lowering our carbon footprint, things that are ongoing, and determine areas that we could improve, calculate our district's carbon footprint, and develop a plan to address this moving forward, including short and long-term goals, and the costs and benefits of doing this. I know that Representative Damon has a lot of historical knowledge for what the district has done for many years, and I think that as the chair of that committee, I'm volunteering him to sort of head up a study on this to figure out what we've already done, what we need to do, where we should go, what it'll cost the district, and all of that, and then hopefully come back with a full presentation for us in the near future.
Mr. Damon, do you want to comment?
Well, I think that's really the only logical approach we can take. I know quite a bit about some of the buildings in the district, but I think, as Superintendent Finn says, data speaks volumes. I don't believe that we actually have that data yet. I need to make a list of items that I would like to see. It doesn't mean that we can't adopt the resolution sooner, but the action plan, I think, has to come after some analysis and then create a long-term plan, because it's not something that you can just jump into without knowing what we've done. And there are several buildings that have had some significant amount of work done. There's some that haven't. But there's also a sustainability piece to the rest of our infrastructure that we also have to take into account as far as supporting what we already have, sustaining it, and then moving forward with new initiatives to reduce the carbon footprint. So, yep.
I strongly agree with what Mr. Damon said. I want to add to what Mr. Donovan said in terms of the climate resolution, and acknowledge that the way I see this issue and the way that one of my personal inspirations, Greta Thunberg, framed the issue recently is that our house is on fire. And the resolution in question doesn't say what kind of fire trucks we're going to use to put it out, and it doesn't say a detailed plan to do that. We can develop that as we go, but it does acknowledge the reality that our house is on fire, and it commits us to putting that fire out. And I am skeptical of approaches that start by trying to determine the cost-benefit analysis of putting out the fire, rather than saying, we're going to put it out, whatever it takes, and then figuring out how to get there.
know that there's a lot of interest on the city. Oh, sorry. I know that there's a lot of interest from the city too, the mayor's office, and actually the city manager. They are very interested in working as a whole for the city toward these kinds of not just the resolution, but resolutions, and how we can work together to make our city an entirely safe environment to raise children, just to be. And I think it's also part of the plan for healthy neighborhoods. You know, in the past, we've had issues, it was brought up earlier, it comes to mind every single time I think about this issue of how we're in the situation we're in with lead paint. It's quick, it was probably cheap, and it was not probably vetted all the way through to not just how it would impact the people, but the environment that the people live in. So there's so many pieces to this. I think that, you know, having data from all these different places will help us, as well as any sort of declaration the committee would want to make. Yep.
Just to no, and I'm not for furthering. I'm just, what I wanted to say is, with what Ms. Parks and Mr. Damon said, combined with the resolution, I think the resolution is more just, you know, recognizing what we're doing. It's not committing us to doing. I mean, yes, it is committing us to, sorry, it's committing us to fixing that problem. It's not saying we have to do it this exact second. I think what Mr. Damon and Ms. Park said is very valuable, but then it also brings what you just brought up is there some collaboration, should we wait for larger collaboration from the city? I'm not sure, but I just, you know, now that you've said that, I don't know if we're waiting for the city to make some resolution. Okay. Okay. That's all I have on the matter. Just like to see it in the future.